it's Essie here from Peartree Cutfiles, and I'm here with a process video for a layout using the Ocean Breeze cut file from the April release, and I'm using Cocoa Vanilla Studios Sunkissed collection, which is available in the Lottie Loves Paper store currently. I'm going to use several techniques using mixed media on this page, so I'm doing things in different stages to allow for bits and pieces to dry. I'm starting off with the letters from the cut file, the negatives that have come out of that cut file. I was going to draw around them and cut them out, but I decided to make them a bit thicker and sturdier, and so I'm just gluing them onto the back of that sheet of ombre paper, and I'm going to turn it over. Once the glue has dried, I'm going to cut them out. I'll show you what I'm going to do with them later, but I'm just popping that aside for the glue to dry while I get my Cosmic Shimmer watercolours out. I've got a little paint colour chart there. I've got a book which I put together myself with just sort of swatch colours in from some of the mixed media products I have, and it just helps mix and match colours up. You saw me hold the paper up against those colours to see which was the best match. So I'm using those to paint Breeze. I want to try and recreate a bit of an ombre effect on that word to match the paper that I've used for the letters. So using those really pretty, these are my favourite watercolour paints because they have a beautiful shimmer and they go on lovely. They're kind of really smooth and creamy, and they are really my go-to for painting. So just using a mixture of the blues and greens, and you'll see I just kind of go backwards and forwards between the colours, and just until I'm happy with the result, really. Applying a bit more green, going back to the paler one, back again. You'll notice I'm not even really sort of cleaning my brush in between. I'm just using the craft mat there to brush off any excess. Going back to the blue, and like I said, just backwards and forwards until I'm happy, adding a bit of the more of the darker shade along the top. And then I'm going to pop that onto it's just like the lid of a plastic storage box, so that I can lay it flat and take it off to dry. Just having a clean up, and then I'm going to go back to my letters, and I'm slicing the panel. I'm not cutting them out separately yet, so I'm going to use the mixed media on the whole of that panel. I figured it was probably easier to do it as a whole piece than try and do each letter separately. I hadn't ever tried this before, so I was hoping that I was then going to be able to cut them out properly without the glitter paste cracking or falling off. I discovered my glitter paste had kind of dried up and gone a bit rubbery when I opened it. This is Cosmic Shimmer as well. I have had it about 4 years though, but I, as you can see, splodged a bit on my craft mat, added a bit of water, and it's as good as new. Really pleased with how that rejuvenated, and just applied some of that through that stencil. That stencil, it was part of a 12 by 12, which I cut up to make it easier to use the different pieces of. So while my mixed media texture paste is drying on my letters, I'm using the packaging technique to add some colour to the background for my layout. This is Vicky Boughton mixed media paper or cardstock, and again using the same colours from the Cosmic Shimmer watercolours to add some colour to the background. But I want it paler than the colour that I've applied to the word, because I want the title to stand out. So I'm watering down the colour quite a lot and dabbing a fair bit of it back off the page as well. Just moving the colour around a bit, blending it where those two colours meet, backwards and forwards until I'm happy. And now, as if by magic, that's dried, and I'm just adding some more texture paste through the same stencil. This is just white texture paste to add a little bit of detail to my background. Obviously I hope it's apparent that I've kind of gone for a bit of a wavy stencil to go with the theme of the layout. And then I'm going to be putting that aside to dry, and back to my letters. So that texture paste is dry, and so I'm just cutting round the letters. Thankfully it works and the texture paste stays in place. So fussy cutting the letters. I could have cut them out and put the paste on individually. I know that I'm kind of wasting some of the paste because obviously there's texture paste on the bits I'm cutting out and throwing away, but I think I would have wasted just as much doing it on the individual letters, to be honest, because I would have kind of gone over the edges and made much more of a mess. I'm such a messy crafter. I do make quite a mess when I use mixed media. Being quite tidy today and organised, clearing up in between myself. Although actually you can notice I haven't cleaned that stencil. I've just noticed. I've just put it aside. Just on the last letter. And then I am going to cut the centre of the O and the A. But just going to use my craft knife to help me with that bit. I find a really easy way of cutting the centres out of circles. Just make a cross with my craft knife, and then that gives me easy access to go in with my scissors and cut round. There's a little bit left there that I couldn't quite get with my scissors, so I'm just using the craft knife to trim that off. And then I'm going to add some ink to the edges. I'm using my finger just because it's easy to get the ink in on those curved shapes. So I ended up with a blue finger, but it did the job. With a sponge, I find I get ink where I don't want it. It's less easy to control. I guess a little makeup, like an eyeshadow sponge would work if you don't want to get your finger messy. So I want to add a frame to my layout. So I've trimmed the mixed media background down, and I usually take off sort of about 1 centimetre, so 1/2 centimetre on each edge. And I'm obviously gutted the middle of that gorgeous paper so as not to waste it. And then just adding some double-sided tape around the edge. I've tried lots of ways of doing this, tape runner, glue. I find this double-sided tape the easiest way of doing this, because I can peel just a small section from each corner and then lay the cardstock over the top without kind of pressing it down too much, because the flaps that are folded over buffer it a little bit, and you can wiggle it around and then peel the rest of the tape off, rather than the number of times I've kind of laid it down, got it in the wrong place, tried to peel it off, it's all got stuck and messy, and I've ended up ruining it. So that's in place, happy with that. And these are the photographs I'm using. My other half and I in Benidorm by the ocean, enjoying the sun and the breeze. So just getting the positioning where I want it and using some wet glue, this is Tombow, to stick that cut file down. I find wet glue works really well on backgrounds where I've got texture paste and mixed media rather than double-sided tape or tape runner would have been really tricky to get onto those thin letters. Making sure there's glue on all of those, enough glue on all of those bits. Where I've painted them, the word breeze has kind of warped a little bit, but that sorts itself out once I stick it in place because the glue holds it back where it should be. Applying that there. Then realise that it's not quite straight, so I bought the that attachment, or that extra bit accessory, I suppose it's called, for the mixed media mat. It's got a little lip on, which actually is just off camera, that you slot on the edge so that you can then get a straight line, which is really handy. And now I'm putting the letters in place, having inked all of the edges so that the white is not visible. I'm now using silicone glue gel to add them back into the cut file. And if you notice there, I put the O the wrong way up. So just corrected that. And that's the great thing about silicone glue gel, is that it doesn't dry straight away. So you've got a little bit of play with the things that you're sticking just for a little while. You can wiggle them about a bit to make sure they're in the right place, which is really handy when you're kind of fitting letters back into a cut file like this. You can make sure you get them where you want them to be. So you can see I've got some ephemera out now from the collection packs. I've sorted out the floral ephemera pack, and I've separated sort of all the blues and greens. And I've also pulled a few bits from the other ephemera pack. Those flip-flops go on and off that layout. They get moved around. I really wanted to use them because I like them. Ended up not putting them on anywhere. But the other bits and pieces I do use. Just added a little background mat to one of my photographs and stuck that on some foam, so that was slightly raised. And then cutting out this Love This strip from the cut apart sheet. Trimming that down. I'm going to pop that above Ocean. And then that little banner from the ephemera pack. Decided I want a little background layer to that word panel as well. And trimming that down. And then this is the fun bit. I love this faffy bit. I've done all the messy stuff, and the main components are all stuck down, so now I can start filling in with the ephemera, trying desperately to fit those flip-flops somewhere, but I just can't find a place I'm happy with. They'll have to be saved for another page. There's cute sunglasses, and then I'm going to start adding some florals as well. Flip-flops back again, nope. Just going to add some teal and blue florals. I did the one thing actually, which I very rarely do, and I didn't match any of the colour. I mean, there's no colours, sort of the teal and blue. There's a very thin strip of blue at the top edge of one of those photographs, but otherwise there really isn't much any blue or teal in the photographs, but they were the colours that came to mind when I thought about doing an ocean page. So that's what I went with, and luckily I think it's worked. I do normally kind of look at the colours in my photos and try and match in with something. Again, adding some of those elements with my silicone glue gel so that they are raised, to give a little bit of dimension. And now I decide I want some splatters. I often do this. It's not until I've started adding some elements that I decide I want splatters. So then I have to try and splatter without getting too much paint on the bits that are already on the page. Using the same paint so that they coordinate with the background and the cut file colours. And then using that paler green to add some slightly bigger splodges, and a bit of a oopsie. If you see on the top left hand side there, I've smudged one of the blobs of paint, so I cunningly cover that up shortly. But meanwhile, just adding some florals in around my photograph, just tucking in some leaves into each cluster, a leaf into each floral cluster, fiddling about a bit to get the placement right. And then I'm going to use these adorable seagulls from Bramble Fox. And there we go, the cover up is in action. Decided I didn't want that one. I'm going to use a different one to cover the blob. I've gone off camera, but I'm just peeling the backing off the perspectives. And there's that. I've had these seagulls for ages and I think they're fab. So I'm just going to add another couple across the top. And then there's the third one. I find peeling the layers off quite therapeutic. And there we go. That's my layout. Still fiddling, just going to add a little bit extra in there. Sometimes I need somebody to come in and say to me, step away from the layout, stop fiddling. It just felt like it needed a little something else tucked in there under those glasses. And then I've got some little hearts as well from the Ephemera pack, and there's some little tiny puffy hearts in the puffy sticker set. Oh, and that's starfish. I was going to say seahorse then. Starfish and that little flower, which I've added into that cluster there. Little tiny hearts to add a little bit more detail into the clusters. Or 3 of them. And then I think there's another little heart going, one of the paper hearts from the Ephemera pack, going into the bottom cluster. Oh, and a button. Love those buttons. Just adds a little bit more dimension, a little bit more texture, and that heart. And there's me done. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you here again soon. Bye.